Hello and welcome to this week's Madaxeman podcast. This is the 9th in our series of lockdown podcasts, and the normal 7 people join and try and make this all work over a Zoom connection yet again. This week we have our usual roundup of what's been happening in the world of painting. We actually talked for the first time about some games that we've played, because some of us have managed to get onto real tabletops and virtual tabletops. We bring back Andy's quiz yet again with a different theme this week and a special bonus question as well. And then we also have a discussion about the Jurchen Ch'in army, one of the more successful armies in Art de la Guerre from the kind of post-Song Chinese era. Interesting army to use. This time we adapt a new format. And a couple of the people bring alternative lists, we discuss them, and then we vote on which one's the best one. And finally, in a roundup, we have a look ahead to what we're all doing next week. So sit back, enjoy the podcast over this weekend.
This means war. This means war.
Well, welcome to the 9th, I believe, Madaxeman lockdown podcast. So we've got 9 podcasts plus 2 bonus episodes. That's 11. We've got 7 people on the screen. We're starting to get into seriously large numbers here, and as we're all kind of chugging along, and I think we're almost familiar with the format here, which is a bit of a miracle. We can dive straight in with this week 9 podcast and see what everybody's been painting. And if Dave, actually, I come to you first. And last week you took a little break from pure samurai, and you'd started doing some Egyptian camels. No, sorry, some normal camels. I think Palmyran. But I hear you've had a bit of a divergence this week. What have you been up to? Did the samurai get finished? Did the camels get done? But what happened to change your life?
The camels are completed and glossed. Mm-hmm. In preparation for dull coating, matte shine, whatever you want to call it. So camels done and dusted. We've got half a tray of camels whenever we might need them in the future.
Is that the official, group noun for camels? Half a tray.
Yeah. So the Bisley tray I've got. So there's 6 camel bows, 6 camel spear, impetuous impacts, whatever you want to call them, and about 4 lots of light camels. So they're done and dusted for future reference. The samurai, the last 4 bases of samurai are sprayed, undercoated, and dry brushed, ready. So that'll be the end of the samurai army, thank God. Mm-hmm. But I've moved on to some Egyptians, as you say. I've got about 4 bags of Egyptians from Gladiator, from Fighting 15s, from Ian. And just to sort of, because I'd never seen the Gladiator figures. And they're actually pretty nice, actually.
So what prompted you to? Was it actually just a test sample, or did they just not have in stock enough for you to buy a whole army?
Well, I mean, his website's got no pictures whatsoever, so I'd never seen any of these before.
Okay.
He sent them away for painting. He just hasn't had them back yet.
Yeah, I know. I think he's got Vexilia.
The guy who does Vexilia, I think, is painting them for him.
Martin.
Well,
okay.
So I mean, Gordon had some. We did a biblical competition about a year ago, and Gordon had some figures, and I went, "Ooh, what are they? They're not bad." And he said, "Oh, they're the Gladiator ones." So I thought, I want to, because I did biblicals years ago for DBM actually.
Yeah.
That, and so I've got big drawers of biblicals which are absolutely not worth using.
Okay.
So I had painted. So I thought, and that's the one gap in my collection, should we say? And I thought, let's buy a few of them just to have a look at the figures. Got some painted up. I love them to bits. They're very, very nice.
Okay. So what figures did you get then? What were they? Did you get chariots? Did you get those sort of 2 horsemen, or was it all swordsmen?
No chariots yet. So what did I get? I got the Houthi swordsman, and so I got sort of 2 bags of 8 sword. It's all 2-handed weapons guys or impact swordsmen. So with a New Kingdom Egyptian army, you need about 6 to 8 bases of impact infantry or impetuous infantry. So I've got figures for that. So I've done essentially 3 bases of that. So I got 2 bags of swordsmen sorted with commanders and some heavy infantry figures. So for the close combat guardsmen, the heavy infantry.
Yeah, that's a nice little anchor to that army, isn't it? But I think Richard Case in the chat I had with him wasn't a big fan of the heavies, but you'd gone for some as well.
Well, we went to Spain just as the coronavirus hit and played a competition which was supposed to be 35 players or something, of which 8 managed to make it.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I played a New Kingdom Egyptian army, and I thought my early Carthaginians would roll over it with my heavy chariots and my heavy foot. And it was actually a lot more difficult and tough than it appeared. So I've actually kind of copied the Spanish players' army as a basis, and sort of started thinking about round that army. But I've actually then last week I put in another order for 85 quid's worth of figures.
It's an easy mistake to make. After you bought those first 4 packets, it would be a waste not to just follow that up. So did you go? Is that 84 with the foot, or have you gone the whole army now? You done and dusted with it?
Well, I've not seen any chariots, so I mean the infantry. I've basically got all the infantry options in that 85 quid, and I've also bought 4 chariots, a pharaoh, and the 3 different chariots, sort of like unarmored sort, bowmen, armored bowmen, etc., etc. So just to have a look at them. So.
Okay.
There'll be another order of another 30 quid's worth of chariots at some point in the future.
Okay. Because Andy, you know Ian, I think, quite well at fighting.
Yeah,
Yes,
that's right. We became friends playing the PK rules back in the 1990s. Then about a year or 2 later, he moved down to the Isle of Wight, and we've kept in touch and stayed friends. And we normally get to visit about once a year or so, but obviously not this year at the moment. I managed to lure him into playing ADLG a few times when we went down there. His group of people play Fog for some reason. I don't know why, but he does enjoy ADLG.
Okay.
So we might lure him to the dark side just
and
yet.
he bought that range from Gladiator Games not that long ago, is it? It's a couple of years ago.
Yes.
About a year ago. Have you heard from him how well it's going? Because it's a range I really like as well.
I think it's going quite well. I think, as I say, he knows that he needs to get some stuff painted and put up there on the website, and it's something he's working on.
Well, you can just get Dave to do it instead for him. Dave,
I might mention that to him.
You can just take
Possibly.
pictures and send it to Gladiator.
You can gazump Martin from Vexilia and see if you can sneak in there with your figures as well.
I don't think Ian's a gazumping type of guy, but if Dave's free to paint some stuff, I'll mention it to Ian and see if he's interested in following up on that.
Well, we can get some photos up there.
I think
your new
Martin's
career, Dave,
better than mine.
pro painter. You're just doing it for exposure.
I wouldn't go that far, but I think Martin's better painter than me.
Yeah, Martin's stuff's fantastic, isn't it?
Yeah,
It can be really, really good.
very
In fact, he chucked in a comment after the paintbrushes one to say that he thinks that your painting soap, your brush soap, is a bit of a scam, and you can just kind of use soap, really. But and that's someone who paints as well as him. So
available from Vexilia.
But then again,
Or shampoo and hair conditioner.
sorry, shampoo and hair conditioner also works.
Yeah.
I
Well, think about it. Particularly for sable brushes, it's natural. It's hair.
I suppose. Yeah, I think looking
I
around
don't
the
be
screen
tried
here,
that.
looking around the screen here, Tamsin, I don't think I can see at least 4 of us who wouldn't really have any of that in the house. So we're probably going to struggle.
What about bicarbonate of soda? Does it work with that?
Yeah, to make it to a glue paste.
I'm
yes,
starting to think Tamsin's just making stuff up to see whether we'll swallow it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, bicarbon super glue. That's brilliant. And
Look
clean
it up.
brushes with tar. It was brilliant.
I could just see one of us will come in next week with yellow hair or something, stuck out like a big afro going,
Well, it
Tamsin,
works for you,
we
I
need to
suppose.
talk.
That's it.
That'd be a result for me.
That would be a result. All right. So, Dave, you've suddenly been paid. So, is the samurai something which we no longer talk about? Is it the great unfinished project?
Well, basically, there's 24 heavy foots on the table, which should be finished this week, and then that's ready to play with. Basically, just needs to come out of lockdown, and then we can get on with it.
Does that mean you've just covered the bare essentials and now you need to do all the extras with it?
No, that's enough for quite a few options, actually.
Okay, well, we'll have to do a special list podcast on the samurai then, I think, at some point.
I don't think that there's not huge amounts of options in the samurai army, but there's enough there for all that.
It's just how you cobble them together. Okay, all right. Well, Adam, then, you were doing something very obscure with tiny bits of string last time we spoke.
Oh, they've been beautifully done and finished, but I've also done some Lord of the Rings figures, the Fellowship of the Ring, because I've been reading it with my children. I've been doing that in my in my slightly more complicated black undercoat.
Okay.
Because I've got two techniques: the black undercoat when I want to try and make them look a bit better, and the white undercoat with blocking it out and the dip if I'm going quickly. Even my better technique, I'm still painting. It's the way I judge my figures now, because I went through a phase of not painting very much because I didn't seem to be getting anywhere. So now I'm going with, got to get stuff painted, got to get it on the table. So how I judge it is, would someone that doesn't play toy soldiers think, oh, that looks good? And the Lord of the Rings figures, I think's got there. And the other thing I did was the Russian tanks, 20 mil.
Yeah, because you were starting those last week, weren't you?
Yeah, that's really easy. You spray and grey, pick out a few details, do the tracks, dry brush on some mud effect, bit of a dip, and they were done. They took literally minutes.
Do you use that special, actually mud type paint, or are you just talking dry brush on some brown?
Well, I got, last time I was in a shop, there was some, I think it was the army painter, do some dry brush mud paint, which I bought a tube, because I'm in a shop. Yeah, I'm buying stuff. And yeah, I use that, and it's, fine, brilliant.
Looks like mud. Okay, all right. And that's fine. And so that's your full set. Then which Lord of the Rings people did you do? Is there a little band of them, or is it the Orcs?
Oh, yes, the Fellowship. So if you know Lord of the Rings, you know the.
Look, everybody knows Lord of the Rings. I think you're talking to a fairly safe audience there with this one.
Yeah,
I think we're probably safe.
I also did one other thing, which I've done some more ships, but not 1,250 scale, 1 to 6,000 scale, World War II. And they are very, very small indeed. And they're quite fun to paint because you've got to use a magnifying glass. And it's getting to the point where they're basically 3D counters rather than figures, but they look like proper ships and they look lovely. And I'm doing some World War II naval stuff. So they're actually quite quick and easy to paint because there's not very much to paint, to be honest.
So what nationality are you doing, Adam?
Sorry?
What nationality are you doing?
US and Japanese, sort of like 1942 Pacific War, and I've also got some ships, so I can do Battle of River Plate, Battle of Denmark Straits, and British and Germany type things as well.
Who sells those? Who sells those?
Hallmark. So I think you get them from Magister Militum.
That sounds about right. Yeah,
in Britain, and because it's like naval games, World War II games. It's like you can get some really beautiful bigger ships. But whenever I played a World War II game, that you always seem to sort of start within shooting distance, which takes away the whole game of manoeuvre and stuff. So I thought I'll get really small ones and make the table that much bigger so you can do some manoeuvre and sort of like tactics before you get to chucking the dice to see who sinks who. So they were quick to paint, which was quite nice. Okay, well, maybe we'll, in future weeks, we will hear about them being used on table. Good. All right. Well, Tamsin, then you, I'm seeing, it was riders were halfway done last time, and looks like there's some command bases as well. So it looks like command bases and the rest of the riders this week.
Yes, Ivor's Rose army is finished.
Ta-da!
As finished as any army ever is.
Of course. Have you bought the guns yet?
Not yet.
There we go then. There we go. That's something else to look forward to.
Yeah. I thought I'd give Gary Miniatures a chance to recover.
Yeah, no,
get back
absolutely.
in the swing of things before ordering.
Is it? Yeah, actually, that's a good point, Andy. Is it a generic War of the Roses army, or have you just started with flags and one particular faction?
Generic.
Okay, so
I haven't done livery for. So livery I've done has just been sort of very basic, generic. No specific liveries.
Okay.
Counted up the points, how many sort of, and before commanders, sort of the figures I've painted up, comes out as about 460 points. So I've got enough for 2 armies.
That works for the War of the Roses then, doesn't it? You can do both sides. Yeah. That's a result. God. So how many, that must be a certain number. That's a lot of box sets to glue together. What's that about? How many box sets do you think you used in total?
I think it's about 210 foot. So that's what, 5 boxes?
5 box sets. Yeah, they're in 40 on a box, aren't they?
And 36 mounted. So that's 3.
Okay.
Yeah, but if you take the longbows as elite, that soon clocks up the points.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So 8 boxes about 160 quid. So that's actually 80 quid an army for 25 mil. That's a great result, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's superb. Okay. And so is there anything else made it onto the table, or was it just I finish them, sit back, admire them, take some photos?
I've been painting some sort of general scatter terrain. I crates, wood piles, and stacks of assume flour sacks.
Okay.
So I'm working on that. I've got a few more to do. That's a lot of it could be used in most games, but more sort of for my pulp games collection.
Okay. And what is there? If they're wooden crates, because that's always. This might sound a really bizarre question, but is there a particular paint color you use for wooden crates? Because they can be all sorts of different colors, can't they? But it's just everybody seems to have a go-to color for doing wood stuff.
I just go with the flow, how I feel. These ones sort of over a sort of brown primer. I heavy dry brush of, I think it was Vallejo cork brown, followed by a lighter dry brush of beige. Then I did a diluted wash mix. 50-50 mix of soft tone and strong tone from Army Painter, either wash, not the dip. And then finish that off with another dry brush of beige, light dry brush of beige.
That's always the thing I find asking you questions like that is the answer's just, I just slap something on really, isn't it? It's just really, there's so little thought goes into it, so little effort. It's almost not really worth asking, is it? Right, so Simon, you were the man who'd received ridiculous amounts of stuff in the post, and I've heard rumours through a secret WhatsApp group that there may be more pressure on the British postage system as well as a result of your exploits of this week. How's your unpacking and getting ready to paint and everything else going on?
Quite good. So QRF Miniatures had had extended their 20% sale on. So while you're looking through various boxes, looking at things, you discover I had a whole bunch of 30 Years War pike and not enough musketeers to finish off some units. So I just had to go and buy some more figures, which have just arrived. So I've now base coated all the 7 Years War infantry, all the grenadiers, and I've got the regimental guns base coated, and hopefully they will be started up this week. So
is that white base coat or grey or?
I'm a big fan of just going the straight white and build it up from there. I've tried the black idea and then never worked well for me. A couple of things I've actually completed this week is I finished a 15mm baggage for my Ancient British. So I bought off eBay. You could buy this puzzle of Stonehenge, and it's just the right size for 15mm. So I've made you can see a baggage of sort of three of the two big monoliths from Stonehenge with a bunch of druids getting ready to sacrifice someone, or hopefully a Roman or something like that.
I've got those druids myself, but I bought them so long ago I can't remember who they're from. Is it?
These are from Magister Militium.
Magister Militium. Ah, yes. So they're from that range that almost used to be Falcon figures or something, wasn't it?
Okay.
Or something before.
Pre my time in the UK, I think.
Yeah, could well have been.
So the Stonehenge has to be reoriented twice a year.
So with the rest of the kit, I'm going to make up a village or something to use as a built-up area for ADLG, because I've got spare druids as well, including.
Well, we all need spare druids, don't we?
You do, yeah. It's got one reaching up, holding a bird and a little golden sickle. So with all the spare parts, I reckon I can make a nice BUA to just put down the centre of the table or something, and say, by the way, here's Stonehenge.
Yeah. Okay.
And
holding up a bird and a sickle, it sounds like it's the local kebab house, and he's about to do some fried chicken or something.
I think there's probably wargaming events we've been to where the local pub has been called the Bird and Sickle as well.
Yeah,
or the sick bird. Yeah,
or the sick bird sometimes. Yeah,
well, having seen some of the quality of the food as well.
Yes, that could be it. Could be it.
What, more celery stew, Simon?
Oh, celery stew or 3 shades of yellow. What choice would you like?
Yeah, that was a grim old time in Spain. Grim old time in Spain. But
and the other thing I've got 3/4 painted up is a 50mm Carroccio from Millington Miniatures. So it's from an old DBM army I'd found back when I was back in Australia, and it's a for the some of the Italian armies, like this war wagon where the priest would come out and say, there's sort of like a rallying point. And in ADLG, they use it as a fortified baggage. So it's been stripped down, repainted in Ferrari Go Faster Red, because it seems appropriate for an Italian. And I'm just working on making up the banner. I used to have a banner of the town of Siena, because my communal Italian army was from Siena. So I'm just debating which town to put up for this one. So it looks quite cute. It's gratuitous and it looked really pretty.
Is that the one with the 4 oxen pulling it? So it's longer than the 80 by 40 base? Or?
Yeah, so this one, the 2 other oxen got sold off. So it now fits officially properly on a 40 by 80, yeah.
But they just have to really strain to pull it on their own.
Yeah. So, but these are proper Italian oxen, so they're big and tough and all that.
Okay.
So,
well, you wouldn't really want, sweaty bullocks straining to, no, that'd be awful, wouldn't it? So Andy, coming around the table to you and your kitchen full of painting paraphernalia.
Yep.
What's the latest story with the, I still keep calling them Vikings, even though that I know that they're the other sort of Saxons.
They're officially Anglo-Saxons.
Anglo-Saxons.
Anglo-Saxons, Anglo-Danes, people to be beaten up by Vikings. And I'm doing 50 unarmored guys at the moment, and I should be able to finish them this week, and then just onto the armored ones. So nearing the end of that project.
And then you've got pikemen coming, because we've done a bit of online drill-based commerce this weekend as well.
Yeah, that's right. Because when I did the Kickstarter, I wanted to do the 1066 stuff, so I bought all the things for that. And then for what I paid for, you could buy some extra packs of things. So I thought, in terms of fillers, well, all my pikemen are a bit kind of gatty and mixed up and don't have enough really nice-looking ones, particularly Seleucus, which is one of my favourite armies. So I thought, I'll get a pack of Seleucid pikemen. So I did. Okay.
So you're waiting for to get to the end of the Vikings and the Anglo-Danes, the Danes, whatever they're called, and then it will be straight into pikemen, which will be quite a difference then.
Yeah,
I guess,
probably. If I don't get I've also sent off for some hard plastic things, Irish Dark Ages stuff. Northern.
Yeah. Yeah, what is that? Those 28mm ones with the dogs, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
it's not Victrix, is it? It's the Agema. Is it Agema miniatures, or am I making that up? There's
Atlantic,
someone.
I think.
Atlantic.
Yeah,
that's who it is.
Well,
yeah,
I thought for £25, get 30 of them plus the dogs, and then added to some metal stuff I've not painted yet, which Clive gave me a little while ago. I've got enough for a Saga Irish Warband.
Yeah, that's a steal, isn't it, for £25? That's really good. And to get the dogs is cute as well. Okay. All right. Well,
okay, might be able to persuade my wife to paint the dogs.
Right.
She's bored as hell. She's like, come on, why don't you paint something? No, I don't want to paint those stuff. So
yeah, there's a limit.
Why don't you paint those? She might be interested.
There's a limit to how bored people can be, I guess. Yeah.
This means war.
I don't know if you saw on the web, I managed to finish off the last bit of basing and tidying up on the Blue Moon Swiss, those few units of Swiss, and posted that all up. And within kind of moments of posting stuff up online saying that the plasticky spear thing that I was trying to do to kind of squeeze the ends of the spears and make some spear points from something I'd seen online, they did start to break a bit. And I think I've now realized, even as I was typing it up and uploading the photos, that there probably is a better solution with either florist's wire, which seems to be a solution, or bristles from a plastic brush. So being slightly dissatisfied already with the plastic I'd been using, I've already ordered some florist wire online from eBay. And then we had a long discussion about drill bits, which I've done that as well. But my kind of big project of the weekend, other than getting the Swiss online, was to start doing or undercoating this Hungarian ready-made, I think it's a ready-made fog army that I bought from Clive secondhand, unpainted, about a year and a bit ago. It's sort of later and middle Hungarian generic. And so I've undercoated it. I've done nearly all the horses with a white undercoat. They're all on lollipop sticks, and then some of them I did black because they're just going to be black anyway. It's easy to do them in black. I've done all the blokes undercoated in white because I was sort of in two minds. Do I go black undercoat and do sort of almost a dry brushy style, that kind of messy style to let the black show through? And I thought for these, because they're Hungarians, they probably warrant a bit sort of brighter colours, sort of greens and reds and things like that. So I've actually decided to go for a first time in quite a while with an army to go for a white undercoat and see how it goes with that one. But
can I just put in for a sec, Tim, about pikes? I bought some time ago from Hobbycraft. Don't know if you can see them. They're little pins. Well, in fact, they're about 54 millimeter long.
Yep.
And a pack of 60 of them cost me £3 or £4 or something.
Yep.
So I'm hopefully going to use them. They look quite thin. They're obviously rigid, so you just need to be watching. You don't stab yourself at the.
Yeah, no, I've used some pins for slightly smaller spears. From I think I've got them off eBay from China, and they're the dressmaking pins, and you just cut the heads off them. But I did find you just with a little pair of pliers, if you nip the pointy end, just the tiniest bit off the pointy end, they get a lot less pointy. Which is really quite important, but just a tiny clip off that with a pair of pliers. But I was trying to do this thing where you kind of because they just go to a point, they're a needle, whereas I was trying to sort of squash the end of a bit of plastic
type thing,
to make an actual diamond headed point. Which
why don't you just buy them? You can just buy.
I know, but we're war gamers. You can't.
The amount of time you spend packing around with them, you could just cut a pack. There's like loads of suppliers online. You can just go buy it. There, done.
No, but I think those spear suppliers. I think is it North Star do most, and they've stopped making some of them.
Zeiston ones.
Zeiston, but they still don't have.
Yeah,
the
last ones I got with North Star, they're fine. They're just very, very spiky. I always mean to sort of like sand it down a bit, to stop it being so spiky. Then I forget. I get lost in doing the model itself. Then I finish off a pike block, and then subsequently stab myself. So I just don't want to play with pike anymore.
No, let's just put you off. I think there's probably an attachment to the Dremel just to sand down the spike.
Little corks on top.
Yeah, corks on top. We're getting back to a Simon special now. So, but I've actually kind of started with white undercoat, which I've not done in a while for an army for most of it, and I've then got the horses. I've decided, even though I hate doing horses, I've decided to do the horses first and just get them all out of the way before I start on the men. So they're all on like 4 horses to a lollipop stick, and I've done a mix of colours and used those coat to arms horse colours, which I've got a pretty much a full set of, to do a real mix. And then I've actually started to follow that thing, Dave, that you sent me, that really simple horse graphic. It's really, really neat. I think it's another thing on the Vexilia website somewhere, but we'll try and post a link to it, that shows how the different horse colours all fit together. Because in the past I've just done brown and yellow and stuff. But I think
look a bit red.
Some of them look a bit, yeah. I think that is actually one of the things. One of the colours in the coat d'arms is pretty orangey red. That one.
But I use that as well. Once you use some shading and that, it actually picks it up quite nicely, because the orangey red one normally has black horsehair. You feel like the Alexia thing, and then it sort of contrasts it quite nicely.
Yeah, and I've
especially once you've got the the rider on there with the saddle and everything else, a bit of shading, it picks it up quite nicely. It's like a light chestnut.
Okay, well that's what I'm hoping, and I think also I'm trying to do that thing where the bottom part of the horse's legs is darker than the rest of the body. So
trick for that.
Okay. This one, Tim. This.
That's quite a complex chart. I think the one I've got from Dave's got about 5 different pictures, not 8,000. You've got the 8,000 pictures. Wow, that's an amazing thing. Okay.
It's lovely, especially with the horses.
I don't think I own that many horses. Yeah, full stop. So
I'm just horses' heads there. No, in Godfather.
And Godfather. So it's sort of so it's kind of a simplified version of it with a bit of luck, and but just to try and concentrate on the horses a bit more than usual. and try and get them out of the way. But it's still, I'm staring at them thinking I've got to do all those horse straps, and these Hungarian horses have got loads and loads of different straps across the back. So it's just a mix of colours for those as well. And then I think there's probably a thing with using darker shader ink on the bottom of their legs and then lighter ink on the actual top of the horses to get that
Did you see the thing on
effect too.
PDF, Tim, where they say Hungarians always bought dark horses?
Yeah, I've completely blanked my mind to that one. I don't believe that's true for a moment.
So Tim, for painting the army, are you doing it as one job lot? You've prepped up the whole army, undercoated the whole army, and you're going to do all the horses. Oh, blimey, that's
Yeah, absolutely. You know, because I started faffing around with looking at lists, and then, you know, you do 2 or 3 lists, and then you sort of look at the early and the late ones, and then you go, damn, I'm going to need to buy some more figures probably if I'm going to do some of these lists. So I better. And so if I think, actually, I think I've left 1 packet of Lightfoot handgunners unpainted because I thought I really, really don't need those at all, and I'm justifying doing them slightly different to some of the other stuff I've already got by thinking I might base these ones slightly different and do it as a completely consistent army. But so I've just painted everything that's in the army, or I'm going to paint everything that's in the army, and then realise that I've got 3 units of spearmen too many for me ever to use, or something like that.
So how long do you reckon the whole army, from first opening a packet to done last dull coat, do you reckon is going to take?
I think it's a difficult one because we're in a really weird scenario at the moment in that we can't go out, so we've got more time for painting. So it's not kind of a normal thing. If you think those 28mm Assyrians that I finished about a month ago, I got those at Devises last year, and then I bought some extras on it, but they were really not particularly finished by the beginning of the lockdown. I guess I maybe did about half of it from the lockdown period onwards, and then so I think this is actually an interesting experiment to say, you know, I undercoated them at the weekend, and then it will be seeing how long it actually takes to get to finished army.
So what's your estimate, so we can be brave.
Well, I'm just staring at all these, you know, I'm thinking painting the straps on these horses is like a lifetime. But then how many infantry is there? Okay, if we draw the line before the point at which I buy some more to round out the army.
Well, that's tomorrow, you mean?
No. I might have to try and finish these before I buy some more. I would say probably 6 to 8 weeks, maybe.
Okay.
Is that a bit bold? I don't know. Well, we've been doing this for 9. We've been doing this for 9 weeks. And Dave, had you started the samurai when you just started the samurai?
The samurai's been during lockdown, so that's been 2 months.
Yeah.
Well, they started in the Edo period.
Yeah, because this is our 9th one of these, so this is 8 weeks to this point in time since we started talking it. So maybe 8 plus weeks. I would think. It depends how much I like the figures. If I get bored, I might slap them about a bit more quickly and get them done. Maybe it depends if I play with the army on online and see if I can actually make something work with that one. Okay. All right. Well, Peter, kind of wrapping up with you. You were doing a World of Austrians, then you were accidentally buying some more, and then you were doing Austrians, and accidentally buying some more.
So, funnily enough, you were mentioning about white undercoat. Yeah, I've been kind of using white undercoat an awful lot. And I've got some more figures on the go. So I just, last week I did some artillery. I started off on the grenadiers, and I've got all the other options. So I've done all the main stuff done now. So I feel quite good about that. But then I put the order in to finish off from Fighting 15s to clear off their last AB figures, and then from Eureka. And I got the Fighting 15 ones in, so I'm just starting to do those. And then I realised they need more bases, so tiny tin troops. So I've got a load more bases just turned up this morning. And then it's a case of hopefully I get the Eureka ones, because I want to do the units together and paint them up together. So I've got them I've got them whitewashed, effectively white spray painted, but I want to then wait for the rest of the figures to then do them as a batch. So I know I'm choosing the right colours and everything else, and save faffing around.
Okay. So have you still got stuff coming to you in the post before you can start that, or?
Yes, just to finish off. So just the last bit from Eureka, I'm waiting to come through. And then I think that'll be enough for me. I've got some Genzers, some Jaegers, and I like the Landwehr because they're in top hats and slouch hats. So they look like sort of like dodgy lost Australians trying to find their way to a ball.
I think most dodgy Australians are a bit lost, or lost Australians are a bit dodgy. Do you
Yeah,
resemble
so-
that remark, Simon?
I'm not even sure you need to say dodgy in Australian. It's like saying something about, no, better not go there.
It's sort of doubling down, I know, but the
Yeah.
things you do. So yeah, I've been playing more actually this week than painting, which has been quite nice.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, maybe that's a good kind of segue to it. Maybe we can talk about things that we've actually played this week.
This means war. This means war.
What, beating your kids up? Your kids have been beating you up? How's that been working?
Well, for once, I had the luxury of beating my son. My son Nick actually plays in ADLG competitions, and quite frankly, usually does better than me. So I actually had a game of him. He decided to choose our Allen army. I don't know why, but he did. So I went with Praetorians and consequently shot into bits with various bits. But even then, I got lucky on a few rolls because he couldn't roll for command values to save his life, literally. But for a young teenager, he did quite well. And we've got a rematch on the cards, but we're just going to work out what two armies. So any suggestions of what two armies should play? I was thinking about picking out going down the list of the world's top 4 or 5 and picking those out to play against. But any suggestions, and we can do a challenge match.
Around.
Pardon?
Do a reversal. You
Well,
take
we were-
Gallons.
We were going to do that, but he just fancied something new because I said, I beat you with the Praetorians, I'll beat you with the Allens, and he said, no, we'll play a different one because he knows all the tricks now.
And then 3 or 4 of us have actually been dabbling with the world of Tabletop Simulator this week, which I was certainly over the weekend, which I'm, without having actually played a game, but with having faffed around with it and pretty much worked out how to set up armies and move troops and things, I'm actually starting to be quite keen to do this. I think this could actually work. I don't know. So I think it's been Peter, Dave. I think Simon, you've been sort of on the edges of this, and Andy, you've been chipping in as well. We all had a kind of session at the weekend. So I guess for people who've not seen this yet, it's sort of a game online, but it's not really a game. It's a sort of computer program called Tabletop
It's a medium.
Simulator. It's a medium. Yeah. It's a physics model, a physics engine. So you buy it on the Steam games platform where you buy all your normal computer games. And what it is, it's a virtual table that then people create their own mods for. And those mods are the boards and the game pieces for different board games. So you can play a board game or a card game or chess or drafts or something like that in a virtual environment. And the thing is, the rules of the game are not baked in at all. They are just pieces, physical pieces. So you need to know how to play the game yourself. And a couple of people have created art de la guerre pieces for this. So there's a table. It looks like actually one of Rafa Tortosa's cloths, which is quite bizarre. I think he must have sent the images across.
Even with all the trimmings about where you put the 1 piece and 2 piece and everything else, it's almost like you need a little Rafa logo in the bottom.
Yeah, it's a little Rafa cloth, one of his designs. And so there's a tabletop with one of Rafa's cloths. There's buttons and markers for things like that. There's a 40mm Barker markers. There are measuring sticks. There's bits of terrain that you can play with as well.
Italian guys that have sorted a lot of this out and done a lot of work, haven't they? It looks fantastic. Really does.
Looks amazing, yeah.
They've done a lot of time and effort in it.
Yeah, it's a superb piece of work. It really is good. And then then I think one of the Italians and then a guy in South London,
Massimo
and Ollie as well. Both must do some sort of 3D modeling skills of some sort. So they've been creating armies and not just armies, but almost complete army lists. So you can go in and go into a kind of bucket or a box of generic medieval troops, and you can kind of copy them and create your own army lists. So it's almost sort of a real version of Little Army Designer online, where you create a list and then import that into the game. And these are literally, it's quite staggering. They're actual playing pieces with a base that's effectively 40 by 40 big. It's got 6 little figures on it. You can push it around. If you roll dice at it, the dice will bounce off it or they'll knock it over. You can pick things up and drop it. And
they've been doing other lists as well, such as Alexandrian, Carthaginian, and even some with elephants. So I'm happy.
Yeah, and it really looks the part. So I think we've been online at the weekend, and there's now a few tutorials out there where you can learn the basics of actually setting the game up. And I think we're going to actually try and play a game sometime this week on this virtual tabletop of shoving these units around. And it's, I think it might be a little bit slower to start with because you've got the interface to deal with rather than just doing things. But I think it's, it seems very, very viable. And I know there's quite a lot of people around the country, around the UK and internationally are starting to give this a go as well to see it. So I bet, within weeks, there'll be online competitions and all sorts of things for this going on.
I mean, the only difficult thing we found was wheeling, and we finally figured that out as well. But it looks fantastic. It's a lovely setup. It still conveys the feel and the movement of moving stuff around the table, provided you don't overcomplicate it and trying to get too clever with it. It just seems a great way to have a medium of just having a game with someone.
Yeah. What I don't know is, do you both need to be there at the same time, or can you send moves to each other and play it sequentially?
I suppose with ADLG, you are, you're reacting, you're evading. Sometimes you're both rolling dice, so it'd be hard to
the other player.
Yeah, possibly. So you might be able to do a play-by thing, but I think it's mainly about you're both there, as if you're actually arranging to meet down the club and play a game.
Andy, you've got to be in the now. You've got to be in the now, Andy.
You've got to live now.
I'll see if I can get shore leave for that then.
Yeah.
Well, it's not like you're heading out, Andy.
True. Yeah. Yeah. Where else you do?
There are also mods on there for Chain of Command and I think Bolt Action.
Yep. There's also I know this is heresy because we're talking about another set of Ancients rules, but To the Strongest.
Yeah, To the Strongest.
By Simon Miller.
Yeah.
He recently ran, I think it was a competition last weekend where they had about 10 players playing one of their competitions just using Tabletop Simulator.
Yeah.
Because his game plays more on a square base rather than more micro measuring.
Yeah, it's on a grid.
Apparently,
isn't
it replicated very, very easily. So,
the Simon Miller up from Muswell Hill. He's the Muswell Hill chap.
Big Bad Enterprises or something.
That's
Red Bat
game. I've played that a couple of times.
Yeah, that seems fun.
Yeah, Big Red Bat.
Yeah.
Tamsin,
they also have Battle Empire on there as well, so I might look to try that out so I can actually try my Austrians without finished painting my Austrians. Yeah. So it probably distract me from finishing painting my Austrians because I'm too busy playing with them.
Actually, well, now we've had a play with it. I think we've accidentally worked out how to change the size of the figures. I could probably go into the Battle Empire one and shrink the figures down to 10 mil size. I could use my own army against. I could use 10 mil against the 15.
The base,
I could use them against 15. So I think that seems really kind of encouraging actually at the moment. And
so you could finally get your British Napoleonics.
I could do. I could not even have to buy them. That could be tremendous. That really could be good.
Do they have figures? Do they have icons for gnomes? That's the only thing. Did you get a Napoleon on there?
I've not seen a Napoleon yet, but maybe someone will do one as a special edition.
I think you just have to do it on one of the chess pieces.
Yeah, you could probably change one of the chess pieces, put a gnome's hat on it or something. There's probably something there. So with a bit of luck, next week we might be reporting on actually playing some proper games, which is it. So, trying to think, Adam, did you manage to fit in a game of beating up your kids this week?
Well, it's not being on my kids. I've been playing 2 games actually. The first I've been playing is Pandemic, because if you own it and you're not playing it at the moment, that's just like wrong.
Yeah.
But the other two other good things about that is, firstly, it is an excellent game. It is really fun to play, and secondly, when you play it with your kids, it's a cooperative game and everybody's on the same side, which actually makes life a lot easier when you've got siblings playing against each other. So that's
I've got to try that.
it's an excellent game, but cooperative games with children is just it's a good way to go, really, because when they play against each other and one wins and one loses, that's an interesting experience.
They normally just gang up on Dad, so you know.
I wish they would. I wish they would. They try and get me to beat the other one on the whole.
I imagine Pandemic is selling quite well at the moment.
I would like to think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's gone sort of like viral sales, is it?
Just before we went into lockdown, I went to some of the gaming stores like Dark Sphere and the Orc's Nest here in London, and people were buying up various board games, and lots of people coming in saying, "Have you got a copy of Pandemic?" And the guy went, "No, I've sold everything. I cannot find a copy for love of money." Just everywhere in the UK at that point had just sold it, and I think people must have been buying it on principle. It's like, it's appropriate, got to do it now.
I wonder if that's on Tabletop Simulator as well. Maybe we could all have a game in that. I bet it is. I bet it's one of those. Play it in lockdown virtually. That would be quite appropriate. Okay.
Available. One of the things I was looking for on the Tabletop Simulator, the ones that, you know, those board games that have lots and lots and lots of pieces that you always lose. Those are the sort of things, because you were saying about Orc's Nest. It's like, I was thinking about what's the one in the 1920s where it's like all the robots and stuff.
What, Scythe? Is that?
Yeah, Scythe, where there's shed loads of pieces. That'd be a fun one on tabletop.
Yeah, I've got that physical game, but I've never managed to actually get it out on table and play it. But they definitely do that on Tabletop Simulator. That might be another thing to have a go at. Okay. And then Tamsin, I think you were saying you were playing Judge Dredd or something.
I played it this afternoon. I decided that it was about time that I actually played a game, Strontium Dog. So I set up a solo game. Went through it over about 4 hours to 8 turns. Took a break in the middle for lunch, but yeah.
Okay.
Actually played very well. It's good fun.
That's how many figures aside? Is that?
It depends. I actually had 7 and 6. It ended up with the scenario I was playing. So. Okay.
And what's kind of the core mechanics on that one then? How does that actually fit together?
Ooh, that's one of the different ones. You have activation chips. So one per model goes into a bag or whatever, and you draw them out one at a time. And certain models that have it, if they've got a cool value of 4 or more, they get a star chip. And so if you draw that out, you can use a star chip on any model. It doesn't have to be one of the cool 4+, but at the end of your activation, you have a chance of returning the chip to the bag. But you have to roll a special, a 2000 AD symbol on. You roll against a number of dice equal to your call, and you need to get at least one 2000 AD result to get it back in the bag. If you fail, your model gets a pin marker, which stays with it until it's next activated. Okay,
so it's sort of a bolt action-esque dice out of the bag sort of thing with some...
And you get two activations, and so if you've got a pin marker, when you're next activated, you can attempt to remove it by rolling against your call. So roll a number of dice equal to your call, and if you get a 2000 AD result, pin marker goes away. Otherwise, you just take an activation to remove the pin marker, which leaves you with one activation to do something else.
Okay, so the cooler figures can do more stuff because they can roll off pins a bit easier.
To do more stuff. Okay. And in my game today, I had one Johnny Alpha, Strontium Dog himself, managed to put his chip back into the bag twice in one turn in correct succession, and got several actions done.
Okay. Wow. All right. Well, it's good how Warlord Games can stretch that that bolt action kind of mechanic into all sorts of different things, isn't it? In fact, Andy, you've played their ships game as well. Have you actually played the Cruel Seas thing? Is that got a similar sort of mechanic, or is that a different one? Oh no, I guess it can't be activations.
I played at the club once, and that was about 6 months ago. I've got the basic kit. I think it's kind of random activation as to who goes when.
Okay.
And when it's your go, you move, you shoot, you fire your torpedoes. And I can't remember if those are resolved straight away or you have to wait till everybody's moved.
No, right. So it's not necessarily dice out of bag. All right. Anybody else managed to fit any shoving stuff around on table in?
Another game I've started playing recently. It's quite a new game. I don't know if you've heard about it. I think it's going to be big. It's called. I've tried playing chess.
Chess, my lord! Wow.
And
do you have to paint the figures up? Who'd you buy them from?
It's there is that, but it's like they're online. It's like really easy to get a game, and you don't have to sort of like mess around with buying mods because there's just websites online, and there's interesting.
All the same.
So yeah, I know it's like there's not too many lists, but you get to choose colours. But as a game, as a pure game, all right, you don't get the military history and you don't get the painting, but as a pure game, it's brilliant. It really is very good. I'm rubbish, but the game is really, really good.
Yeah.
But
I play that about 3 times a week with the kids in the garden. We've got a nice large chess set out on the table out there. It's just a nice one, having a break from the calls, go out, have a game, and watch them destroy me.
I start playing chess with the children
Very
as well.
cathartic.
But there's another good thing about it.
It's like Louis XIV's gardens at Versailles, with the minions moving the chess pieces around.
Well, you've got to give them something to do.
Yeah, exactly.
With social distancing, you need a larger chess set.
Is that what you're imagining, Dave, as you look out your window of your flat in Harrow?
At my flat without a garden, I'm seeing Peter with his symmetric gardens and his little figurines on a chessboard where somebody runs up and moves them around.
All his gardeners doing that.
It's just next to the swimming pool, Dave.
Next to the bridge from.
I tell you what, Dave, it's bloody annoying when the flamingos come along and move the chess pieces around.
Yeah.
I mean, one of them tried humping the horse, for heaven's sake.
Yes, I think we're going down a very, very dark alley here, really, aren't we? So to speak. Maybe this kind of which weird thing have you done at the bottom of your garden is a new feature that we could introduce for next week, possibly.
No,
I think that's probably drawing a line under it. I think you're probably right. Okay.
This means war.
So this week, our usual 700 people come up with a list which we talk about for nearly 18 hours, and then it's tomorrow, slightly out of control session on Art to Laguerre lists. We found a way of trimming it down after I think more than half of last week's podcast was involved talking about Carthaginian lists, and we're even getting lists being sent in from people who weren't on the podcast, which was stretching it out even more. So we're trying a slightly new, tighter format this week in which a couple of people have actually come up with a list. We randomly selected list 216, which is actually a very successful, frightening competition list, the Jurchen Ch'in, one of the lists with impact bow cavalry, which is always very good. And what we look to do this week, we've got both Peter and Dave have pulled together different lists, and we're going to ask Pete and Dave to talk their way through those two lists. We're all going to have a conversation about it, and then at the end, the 7 of us will have a vote on, actually the other 5 of us will have a vote on if these two lists were facing off against each other, which one do we think would be most likely to win, irrespective of who's actually doing the generaling stuff on it. So if I can flip up on the screen sharer, we'll start with Peter and your list here, which you sent me on an image file. So, Peter, talk us through your Jurchen Ch'in list from the good old Jurchen Ch'in Empire.
Well, I had a look through it, and it's how you break down the troops. And I decided to make use of an ally because I just wanted to double down on the heavy cavalry impact bow. Heavy cavalry impact bow in Art de Guerre is bloody good. It just goes in, does the business. You've got the shots in, but you've got to have it elite, because you want the shots to go in, you want to cause the damage, and then you want to hit them. It's just bang. And if you're going to hit, you might as well have the general in there, and that's why I've got included. I've got included for both of those, because it's just go in there, wipe them out. When you're laying out the table, what I want to put out is I've got a big studgy group in the middle that's going to have an effect on them, with several spearmen, the medium swordsman bow, and a bowman in there. So you've got 5, frontline fighters that can actually do something that draws the idea in. Meanwhile, on one side, you've got 6 heavy horsemen, heavy cavalry impact bow elite, and some light cavalry bow. On one side, you've got another couple of heavy impact bow, provided they actually go reliable, because I went for the allied just to save the points and included allied. And then you've got 4 light cavalry. So you could either use the Mongols, as a sort of like a holding pattern, but then with the heavy cavalry impact bow to keep them sweet, sort of thing. And then you've got the Jurchen Ch'in to really, the heavy cavalry impact bow elite to really go as that's going to be my hit. The mid one are going to either slow people down or draw people in. Doesn't matter which. I'm going to get round one way or another. And when I get round, I'm going to be eating you in on the edges very quickly. And I'm not going to worry about you coming too much straight at me, because this is the problem. When you have to rely on coming around on the wings, you need something stodgy to take up the middle, that big carbo load in the center. And that's with the heavy spearmen, so you can't just charge me down. And the swordsman bow to, if it's someone that you think it's going to be cavalry or whatever, they're going to double check against that with the bowman and everything else. So that's basically where I was going with this. I've got a decent amount of command with competent and brilliant, so I can have a bit of movement, and that's how I intend to take them down.
That's an enormous block of 6 heavy cavalry impact bow elite. I'm not sure I've ever seen that before. That's just phenomenal, isn't it? But
it's just that shock value. You put that on the table. I'm making a statement. What are you going to do about it?
Do you ever? They'd just go forward, shoot, and then charge, wouldn't they? They would be happy to fight almost anything.
Absolutely. They're going to chew you up and spit you out.
Yeah, and a brilliant general included. That's pretty bold, but I guess he can survive. And then, I don't know, that command in the middle with three medium swordsman bowmen and 2 heavy spearmen, you're describing that as stodgy, but I'm looking at that thinking...
Squelchy.
Bit squelchy. Yeah, that's it, Andy. Bit squelchy. Do you think,
is
there a minimum number there?
Because they're not going to be munching forward, right? So you come forward, you're playing into my tactic.
I see. So you're actually not, you're avoiding the textbook trap of deploying them on the edge of the deployment area. You're deploying them slightly back.
They'll be set back a little bit. You'll come forward to that. I'll wipe out either one side or the other. And then I'm coming into the side of whatever you think is going to take in those. Meanwhile, I've got bowmen shooting at you.
So you're chipping away a bit. And do you think the other flank, because you've got 6 bowmen, 6 of the horse on one side and only 2 of the good horse on the other, is that...
But it's elite light cavalry bow.
Okay. So you're anticipating fighting with them as well?
I've had it happen to me a couple of times. You've got light cavalry bow. You double them up. It's just a misnomer. You can have them come in at different angles, have them all over the place, and it just... Either it's a total distraction, or they think, oh, okay, I'll just commit a couple of cavalry because it's just their heavy cavalry. And next thing you know, it's like light cavalry bow all over you, a couple of shots, and it starts to really chip away, especially in period. If you stay in period, most of the troops, it's not going to be 2 massive armies. You're really going to be taking them down.
Okay. So I guess in period, the Jurchens, they're the ones who kind of took over the Song Chinese and beat up the Khitan Lao. They were kind of brought in as a group of hairy mercenaries, I think, and to beat up the Lao, who were some hairy mercenaries. And it didn't go too well for the Song Empire, because the people they brought in to beat up the other mercenaries decided to take over the entire country. And in that great Chinese way, they absorbed or were absorbed into the Chinese system. and suddenly they end up being counted as a Chinese dynasty, even though they weren't really. They got taken over. So has anybody else got any? It's such a straightforward list composition. In a way, I'm sort of struggling to think of much more to say.
Can I ask or comment the 6 heavy cavalry impact bow elite? Now I do Mongols sometimes. It's a troop type that I use, and because I'm not sure whether it's worth 14 points, which is one question, because I'm genuinely not sure on that. And is it good enough to go forward in a big mass and expect it to beat whatever it's coming across? Because it is, you still got to be careful with them. I think they're not as I don't care as much as some other troop types. Do you reckon they can just sweep forwards? Because
right, good question. It's a good point. I've used this, not exactly this, but Mongols himself at BritCon several times to great success. The difference is with the heavy cavalry impact bow elite. One thing is either they're coming at you, and fine, I can shoot and retreat if I think they're a bit too much until I've chipped away a little bit. So you can be a bit clever with that, or it means they're not going to get too clever with it, because sometimes the normal shooty cavalry bow, you're trying to get around them to trap them so you can charge. These guys have got impact. All right, you're going to charge. You worked out your maths on it. It's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. About most troop types, they're going to be a little bit hesitant unless, say it's an elephant coming at you, in which case I'm just going to shoot and retreat. I can still evade. I've got, 8 cavalry there with the light cavalry bow and that I can just play that.
If they're in a situation where you shoot, retreat and evade, sort of, they're what you've got to win the game though. So if they're going on into a holding pattern.
But I'm only looking to get a couple of hits on them. I'm not looking to kill. If I just get a couple of disorders, I'm going in.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
I get a couple of disorders, and it's 8 units. So if it was just a couple, like the other side, so I totally agree, because the ally, the ally is the 2 heavy cavalry impact bow elite as well, with the elite light horse. They're going to shoot, invade, and then take the opportunity. With the other one, because it's 6 of them, it's, well, come on then. What are you going to do? All right. You're going to take a couple of hits. All right, I might lose one going in, but I've got another 5 heavy cavalry impact bow, and I'm going to be on your flank, and my light's going to be around you, and I'm going to be swamping you, and I've got a brilliant commander. Lovely.
Do you think, for 6 of them, that's potentially 2 or 3 groups all doing stuff? They are expensive. You are going to use them. They can stand up to things. But does that make including the brilliant commander, that makes him a bit vulnerable to being engaged? It makes him a bit vulnerable to being lost in what's still only a 20-point army. He'd be a 3 breakpoint loss. And once he's engaged, it's suddenly a lot harder for you to maneuver the other troops. Because that, I think that almost looks like, to me, it's a small detail, but the possible waste or not good spending of 3 points. I can see it on the other one for sure, but it looks a little bit, I don't know, a little bit indulgent.
I thought about that. I agree with what you're saying, but I just fancy damn well trying it out. And it's the ballsy, go in, win or lose. And it might be one of those educational moments where I go, I wish I hadn't done that, but sod it. If as Adam was quite rightly put, if that's the wing that's going to win it, you've got to be in. You're going to be in it to win it. There's no half measures. You've got to go for it. It's like Rafa, when he includes the commander in with the elephant. It's like you can't even recover that one, but it's going in, and it's going in, and it's coming in, and it's a +1 advantage. So I'm elite, heavy cavalry, impact. So I'm probably up on the impact. I'm elite, and I've got a general, and I'm probably overlapping you as well. Because, of course, I'm going to have that guy as the one with the overlap. So I'm already up several on you, and hopefully I've actually shot you as well. So, you're at 0, I'm suddenly at 3. you're talking what, 80-something% chance of win.
Okay, so it's committing you to a play style. That's almost the main reason for doing it. It stops
I'd
you
be-
just bottling it.
Yeah,
I'd be inclined.
it's the play style of I'm going to go and get an early beer one way or another.
Peter, I'd be inclined in that list for the 6 elite guys to swap out one of them for an ordinary heavy cavalry bow. The reason is it saves you 3 points, so your general doesn't have to be included, and you've then got a unit which can be used to come around the flank, and when it hits in the flank, it causes a cohesion hit and a drop on the enemy.
You see, I've thought about that before. I understand what you're saying, Andy, and I've tried that before with the Mongols. And what I had there, and maybe it was just my style or my inability to maneuver, was that they ended up trying to concentrate on that. So it never actually got to do that. It was more me managing that medium one, so he wouldn't get shot and I wouldn't get that one killed.
Well, you keep it the second. You keep it the second line till you need it. Tuck it in behind the end unit on one flank.
I prefer 6 of them line up and one's coming over and going round you, and it's going to hit you one way or another. Because if you've got infantry, I can have my heavy cavalry bow impact come up to shoot. My extra one can overlap at the side. If you charge me, I can evade. I can hit you at the side. Or if I can't evade, fine. All I have to do is last one round. I come in the side, then I pull back, and I've got you hitting on the side with impact bow. So there's,
Yeah, this is an army that commits you to a play style. It commits you to a play style. It's got a complete bacon attitude. I think it's you're completely involved. Okay, well let's try and stop this one and let's have a quick look at Dave's list then. I will try and bring this up on screen share as well. Where have we gone?
It'd be funny if it's identical, wouldn't it?
It's not.
No, I bet it's not. I bet Dave's doing a lot more.
Dave likes a lot more infantry.
A lot more messing around. Right,
Okay.
so we've got Dave's army here then. 1120.
So
Still got an initiative of 3, but no infantry at all. So Dave, describe this list to us, how you put this one together.
So, well, actually, it's very much based on Thomas from Belgium's list that he used in Greece.
Greece, yes. Yep.
And so this is a kind of army that I've wanted to play with for a while because I think these are very difficult armies to play with. I took one to Bournemouth, to the competition in Bournemouth. I took a Byzantine army and I took a load of medium cavalry impact and got absolutely shredded by Byzantine bowmen. So I've like Peter, I've gone with as many of the heavy cavalry impact bow as I can have. So although I've got a first command with only 4 of the heavy cavalry impact elite, so let's start with the ally. The ally is to hold down 1/3 of the table in, and to sit there and make somebody else come and make him non-allied, to make him dependent. So that's like Peter. I've got a Mongol commander included, heavy cavalry impact. I've got a couple of elite light horse and a couple of an ordinary light horse. I think I've saved a few points on Peter's army on that ally there.
Yeah, I think Peter had 2 of the heavy cavalry.
And
I also had a competent commander. Because the light cavalry, you want to be able to move it around a lot, don't you?
Well, the idea of that command is just to delay and to tie down 1/3 of the table while the damage gets done by the other 2 commands. And in those other 2 commands, so the first command is 4 heavy cavalry impact bow elite. But then I've got another 3 heavy cavalry impact bow in the second command, including 1 non-elite. So I think I overwhelmed there. But the other thing I always think is that so the medium cavalry impact bow are there. So what I'm going to do is come up and have a bow fight with any opponents, but I'm going to try and treat my medium cavalry impact bow. I'm going to use light horse to cover them, try and get them wings. And that's why I've gone with 2 brilliant generals, because I think I've got a lot more maneuver in there so I can run down one wing with 2 light horse, 2 medium cavalry, whilst pinning in the fronts with the heavy cavalry impact bow. Does that make sense?
I think it does, yeah. So yeah, your first command is, if we compare it to Peter's, your Mongol command is pretty similar. But yours is more of a holding one because it's only got two of the heavy cavalry, and Peter's had 2, and its light horse is slightly worse. Your first command is also very similar in a way. Peter had 6 full fat, and you've got 4 full fat and a couple of mediums to pad it out. And your light cavalry is a little bit thinner as well. But instead of that holding pattern in the middle, which I guess for Peter's army kind of commits itself to being the withdrawn centre and the big punch on one wing, you've got a command that's sort of similar to the first one. There's 5 kind of pokey cavalry, 2 are full fat, 1's heavy, 2 are medium, and a couple of light horse as well. So you've got two commands which can both, they're not quite as, solid right hook as Peter's, but they're doing very similar things, but you've actually got 2 of them. So it's actually...
So the idea is to concentrate the heavies together, but to have, because I've got 2 brilliant generals, I've got the command to treat the medium cavalry impact bow and the light horses independent groups, and then to let them go hunting around the edges. So it's come forward, pin with the heavy cavalry, exchange shooting, but work down the wings with the...
So my experience with the Mongols, and please everybody else chime in, is that unless I do elite with the heavy cavalry bow, ideally impact, I suck at shooting. It just doesn't work for me. You end up with one of those long drawn out fights. So I see on this you've got a whole bunch that aren't elite bow. So for me, I've had problems actually. I've ended up with draws. Supposed to wins, or really squeaky ones if I don't do the elite with the bow shooters.
So you've got 8 heavy cavalry. I've got 8 heavy cavalry.
One of
mine's
light cavalry is all elite as well.
Yeah, I've got 2 elite with them. I think the difference there is, I thought about taking an infantry command as the way you've done it, to hold terrain and things like that. But I think you can mark, as long as you haven't got a gentle hill with brush on it sitting in the middle of the table for your medium infantry bow to sit on, which I agree is a problem. I think you can mark those out of the game whilst I overwhelm the rest. I think.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that, Dave, because I think if they were heavy foot, the heavy foot mixed bow, like in the Ghaznavid army, maybe, but when I've played against this with, I think Dave Hanley used it with at Roll Call last year, and it was a newly painted 25mm army, and he'd got those medium foot bow, and I think he actually did a bit like Peter. He left them initially, but then when they start moving, because they're medium foot, they move twice, which is 6, and then they've got a shooting range of 4. So suddenly they're projecting effectively 40 centimetres across the table from their start line. And he kind of waited until everything was a bit committed and then brought them up quite quickly. But I think with Peter's army, maybe possibly thinking about that, Peter's foot command was an ordinary general, so it might actually be a bit slow at bringing them in. They might be a bit kind of pinned down with it. So it's an interesting challenge. But I think those bowmen, if you've got enough to commit the rest of the enemy army to battle, then the bowmen can join in and start playing. But if they're there on their own, they can get picked on. But I think, oddly enough, looking at these 2, I kind of wonder if yours, which has got 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, you've got 12 impact bow cavalry, and Peter's got 8. So you've got 50% more of them. I think that would probably outmug the better quality, slightly better quality light horse he's got. But it's really whether his 2 or 3 medium foot bowmen could then come in and intervene to beat up your medium cavalry and give him the edge to counteract those extra cavalry that you've got. In some ways, I would kind of like your army, but perhaps swap out the medium cavalry bow in the 2 medium cavalry bow in the middle command for a couple of those bowmen, possibly. In fact,
yeah, I've thought about that.
Yeah, and our
bowmen are good against light horse, but I think that's the danger is there. Especially the mixed unit spear.
No, they're swordsmen. That makes them a bit vulnerable, doesn't it?
They're swordsmen. They're going to be vulnerable to the medium cavalry impact. I mean, I'll sacrifice light horse getting damaged or even killed on the way in, just to get my medium cavalry impact into those.
But then I've got heavy spear by the side, so I can either take you out or have the overlap. So
yeah. It's a die rolling thing.
It'd be an interesting one to try.
That assumes there's no terrain.
I think both of these armies are going to end up with very little terrain, aren't they?
I think with these armies which are very heavily cavalry impact bow, let's just forget whether they're medium or heavy. I think the matchup becomes very crucial. So if you come up against a Nicaphorian army where someone's taken a lot of mixed spear bow units, you're going to get shredded. You're going to get absolutely murdered. But then if you're fighting against a Gulam army where you're talking about heavy cavalry, then it comes down to the bow fight. And although you've got a lot of elite heavy cavalry in there, the bow fight in the centre can be a complete lottery. And that's where the game will be won or lost.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? Okay, so
I think these 2 armies have got 2 different styles, and I'm going to say I prefer Peter's for a very clear reason. I've tried using Mongols, and I don't play ADLG too much, and I'm not a great player, and I found using Mongols really hard work. Because you've just got to be on it, and you're always doing stuff, and you've always got to be so careful about what you're doing. It's like with Romans, you've got a whole huge mass of Romans in the middle, and they go forwards, and you don't have to think too much because that's their job. And with Day's army, it seems to be more of a manoeuvre. I've got to think about it, and for my level of play, that ain't great. Whereas Peter's army, as he said, has got a clear plan. You know what I mean? You put them down, and you push the game, and you do this. Now, I'm not saying in the hands of a skilled player, Peter's army is better, but I'm saying just for my sanity and my level of play, I think I could do better with a clear, simple plan than on an army that I've got to be too clever with. So, yeah.
No, I get what you're saying, although the interesting thing is I've played against this army. It was Tom Mastrio's army at Greece, that thing a couple of years ago. And I was using Ghaznavids with it, and it gave me a real beating, but it gave me a real shock because it does look like a dancy around, shooty, redeploy Mongol army. But what it actually also is a reasonably high aggression army with, 12 impact bow cavalry out of a breakpoint of 19. And what you can do with it, say, okay, I've got 11 of these really good cavalry. Even the medium ones can do something at impact. That's going to be more than most people have got. Mm-hmm. So if I can get them into the other person's cavalry, and if you're talking in period, you're not necessarily coming up against knights here. You're just a little bit. You're almost that end of it, but maybe it's an Eastern period or something.
In theme, this is the strongest list.
It's a very strong
list. It's better than any of the others, pretty much, apart from the Mongols.
Yeah, if you say I'm going to use it like a Mongol army, you might be misusing it. You're actually saying, I've got 12 of these things. I'm going to shove them into the other person's cavalry as quickly as possible. I'm going to try and avoid their infantry. And I think if the infantry are in, like Peter's army, where the infantry are all in one block in the middle, the infantry have got to rush out to one or the wings to support their own cavalry quite quickly. If the infantry are divided into packets, they can act as little bastions and support your own cavalry. But this can really overwhelm someone else's cavalry by throwing effectively six impact bow cavalry at either wing of an enemy army and leaving a hole in the middle. So if you just said this is just a charge army, if these were all medium knights, it might be a different way around it. But I think it's a tricky one. But it really overwhelmed me. It was really kind of like, I think it actually hung back to start with, and then it just all threw itself in, and you can end up with like 12 impact combats almost in one go.
There's a lot of movement, isn't it, in it? Even though I've got the infantry there.
Yeah.
Like you say,
the other thing to
it's
say
still
is everything in that army
goes
shoots.
free.
Yeah.
Everything in that army shoots. I think the one point, although you've got 20 to my 19, I think you've got 2 of the heavy infantry. Those heavy infantry are going to be, although they're good support, they're going to be a bit lost, I think.
Well, they're just to basically capture your attention and go, well, I can't just charge straight in at those guys, which puts most people off. Meanwhile, as Tim was saying, you get distracted. Before you know it, you've got a, heavy cavalry impact bow shooting at you with a medium swordsman. So you've got, Dave comes along with some medium horse. Great, I'll shoot at that with a bowman with another thing in support. There you go. There's another hit.
Interesting. All right. Well, look, shall we kind of come to a kind of quick conclusion and run round the board then? So, Tamsin, if I start with you.
My first thoughts would be to go with something like Dave's list for your cavalry.
One vote.
Yep.
But I know my own limitations. If I was playing, I would probably actually go with Peter's list. It simplifies the plan. Sort of with my general level of competence, I think it's better to be as simple as possible.
Okay, so you think Peter's list wins it for you because it's more usable then, I guess.
More usable for me.
Okay, more usable for you. So, Andy, which one do you think out of these two?
I'd be more comfortable using Peter's list. I think it's more flexible. I think if I was using Peter's army, I would try and get as much terrain as I could once I knew what the enemy army, if I knew I was facing an enemy army like Dave's, because nothing in his army is going to like terrain, whereas you might get lucky and get somewhere where you can park your guys, and then you'll always have space enough to put a 6-wide cavalry block. So
okay.
I think that's why I would choose that.
Right,
also, if you get a block of terrain on one side of the battlefield rather than the centre, you put your foot command in there, and then they can still operate.
That's
Don't
like
need to go
6
in the
troops
centre.
that can't be beaten. Okay. Simon, what about you? Have you got any thoughts on these two?
Yeah, I'd be going for Peter's army as well, because I've been like Tim. I've been on the receiving end of that army in 25 mil, and it ripped my medieval army to pieces. Because I wasn't expecting the medium swordsman command, and so once all things started to happen, they popped out of nowhere, like they were hiding in some terrain. And then once it was safe for them, they walked out saying, "Hi, I've got a very large sword. Guess where I'm going to put this into you? It's your flank." And that works quite well. I've used Mongol style of armies of mass mounted. If you're a skilled player and you get the right table, they can work really well. If you get the wrong table, it's a very quick and very ugly game. So I'd rather say a bit more, so you can at least match up with a few different armies rather than being very one-sided.
Yeah, I suppose that is a factor actually. Those infantry do give you some options if you don't get the terrain your own way. Actually, in competition, it just gives you a little bit more tools in the toolbox. And then, Adam, what about you?
Well, as I say, for me, I would prefer to use Peter's list. But I think if these two armies are in a matchup, if Dave's list player was a good player, I think it would have an advantage in a matchup, because it comes down to can the cavalry ride down the infantry command, and if you're a good player, you can probably set that up so you can. So I think a strict dice off there, I would be going with Dave using that army is quite good. But for me, I would also use Peter's army, if that makes sense.
Okay, so if these two were fighting each other, you think Dave's army, but you would still choose Peter's to use?
Yeah.
That makes sense. Okay. I must admit, I think, even though we're kind of 3-1, I'm actually probably with you on that. I think that's probably a good summation. If you're saying these two lists matching each other, you probably got both generals looking for pretty open terrain. So I think you'd end up with probably not enough terrain for the spearmen and the bowmen to do, and I think everybody with the Jurchen army, there is an element that you do expect to see those Chinese infantry and spearmen. Well, maybe not the spearmen, but certainly those mixed infantry now. So with that expectation, my gut feel is that Dave's army would just be quicker across the table on both sides, and be able to mug. It would go toe to toe with Peter's big command. It would probably just come off slightly worse because of the medium cavalry, but not too much. I think it would mug the Mongol command a bit better. I think, Peter, what I would the thing about your army,
I've got more heavy impact than he has in the Mongol command.
No, but I think he would probably stick the core 2 against it, would be my guess.
I could just drop 2 of the medium cavalry and a light horse across to do. It depends on where people set up, but I think I've got much more manoeuvre and flexibility.
And I think that's where I kind of lean slightly towards Dave's. And I think it's that command and control. You've got the 2 brilliant generals commanding 2 commands which can both operate in 2 halves. You've effectively got 4 commands there in those 2, just because the brilliant generals can split them. And I think, Peter, what probably tips it for me is I'm just unconvinced about the brilliant included. I'm unconvinced by the included, and I'm actually almost unconvinced by the brilliant in a command that almost just goes straight forward and fights. And whereas that point I was making about,
got to be committed.
I think he's got to be committed, but then that might say make him competent, and I would then probably spend the points on making a competent general in that middle command, just to get those Chinese bow swordsmen moving a bit quicker, because I just would fear they could get a little bit, they could be involved too late. So I just think I'm really tempted by it. It's a very tough call, but I just think in a straight matchup, Dave's running with 5 commands and you're running with 3, just because of the command structure. But I think if I was putting your first command with a competent included, that would be fine, and maybe a competent in the middle might actually almost tip the balance. I just think that those medium infantry might be a bit too slow to get involved in the game, but it's pretty close, as it would be, I guess, with one list. So I think that's probably a 3-2 win for the boy Webb on that one. Just about.
Before we finish on this, I'm just wondering people's thoughts on how these lists would fare against armies in theme, which can be infantry heavy, like the Koreans and Song Chinese.
I'd be very happy against them, because I could just, most of the time that people pick one wing that they are basically either throwaway or has a couple of horse, I'm going to overwhelm that. And I can wait for the rest to come down.
The trick is, if you're facing someone who's got spear or even bow, you stand in front of them with your heavy cavalry, shoot them, and they have to charge you away.
Yeah.
And
I've had that done to me, yeah.
Once they're damaged, once his bowmen are damaged and they try to charge you, you are going to kill them. And if you don't kill them, you break off and come back and shoot them again. So you've got a massive, these heavy cavalry impact bow have got a massive advantage against pike, spearmen, anything slow moving like that. And I think that actually is a bit of a damage in the game. But then if you're facing something, as I say, something like Nigathorian, I mean, at Bournemouth, I played a competition. I think my enemy had 10 heavy infantry mixed bow spear, and I could do nothing against them.
Yeah, that's a tough opponent.
They absolutely shredded me when I had a medium cavalry impact army, and I learned that lesson.
Yeah.
Terrible match.
Koreans can have 6 mixed heavy spear bow.
Yeah, but I think you can deal with 6. That's, I mean, it's when you get into the realms of 9 and 10 that you go, what the hell is that army, and how am I going to deal with that?
Yeah, I think both of these armies are beating up one flank with a big block of 6 heavy cavalry impact bow, aren't they? Really, that doesn't change. I just wonder if that thing about forcing yourself down a way of fighting. I just wonder, Peter, whether your infantry command is actually a little bit lightweight, that if you ended up trying to actually use it to take on infantry, it might go wrong. It's almost better if it's not as good, so you don't use it.
I understand what you're saying. It's almost like it's a come on though, because I want them to come towards me. I want them to march into my shooting range. I want to get a couple of shots in them to keep their attention. Meanwhile, either one wing goes round or the other wing goes round. Don't care which.
Yeah, true. Well,
I mean, Dave's is a bit different with doing the Civil War. I'd actually probably take, as Adam's idea, be pushing up a little bit more and then using the bow to support and shoot and everything else. But otherwise, come on. It's like...
No, I get it. Makes sense. But all right, we'll go back to it then. It's a 3-2 win for the boy Webb. And,
This means war.
Well, look, we've now done a different format then on the list building thing, which seems to have worked well in that it's lasted less than most people's lifetimes, which is good. And we're now into the tail end of this, not the tail end, the exciting, the real highlight of it, the thing that everybody waits for and tunes in for. And it is now time for Andy's quiz. Okay then, Andy, we're back for your quiz. So remind us of last week's questions. Tell us last week's answers. We haven't got blankety blank music this time. It was a different thing. And bring us the new set of questions and the new theme for this week, please.
Okay, well, the questions last week were on the theme of famous last words. And I asked 3 questions about whose famous last words were the ones I asked. The first being, when asked to whom he was leaving his empire, said, to the strongest. Anybody know?
Alexander.
Yeah, Alexander the Great. Is that quite right? The second, who said to his firing squad, aim at the heart, not the head?
Napoleon? Did he get shot by a firing squad?
It's something similar.
It was Marshal Murat.
He didn't say quite that.
Funnily enough, I was thinking Lord Flashheart.
Shoot at my heart.
I was thinking Lord Flashheart. Don't mess up the face. And Murat's just...
Well, that was the idea, yeah. He was so vain. He didn't want his face... Right?
Yeah.
And the third one was who said shortly before he was shot by a sniper to his troops, don't worry about them, they couldn't hit an elephant at this distance.
It's one of the American ones.
American War General.
It's the name Sedgwick or something like that.
Correct, yeah, John Sedgwick. The American Civil War. Some people think his final words were, they couldn't hit an elephant at this disc. Right, so this week's questions are on beasts of war. If we're going to be more particular, it's animals of war rather than dogs and humans, but that's a bit ponderous to say, so we'll just say
Elephant.
beasts of war. Down, easy boy, right. First question is, which nation was beaten by the Seleucid Empire in 279 BC, the battle known as the Elephant Battle? Was it the Scythians, the Bactrian Greeks, or the Galatians?
Okay.
Simon's got elephants for that.
Pardon?
Simon's got more elephants than anybody.
Well, you had an elephant question.
Peter, we can have you interrupting at any point if you just come in and say the word elephants repeatedly. It's all good. I'll get that back. We can just chip it in. It'll all work. We know where your obsession
lies. The elephant's in the question, not the answer.
Yes.
Right. So the second question is, the Roman Emperor Nero allegedly appointed his horse as consul. What was the name of the horse? Was it Equitatus, Incantatus, or Incitatus?
You sure that was Nero?
Yeah. No, it's Caligula.
I
thought it was Harry
Nero,
Potter.
Well, look, a Roman emperor who was a bit bonkers. Let's insert that. Let's redefine it more broadly.
Again, you have to qualify that statement
Yes.
of, a mad Roman emperor.
A mad Roman emperor appointed his horse. Fine.
One of the more mad ones. Right?
One of the more mad ones.
Right.
I bet it's got a
The third question is, which branch of the British Armed Services used hedgehogs to attack the Germans in World War II?
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
No, that
three great. Yeah. 3 great animal themed questions. And that brings us to the end of Andy's quiz for this week.
Question, comment les voir? Question, le trou est sans fond? Question, la légende le dit? Question, elle dit aussi? Question, c'est une maladie? Question.
I've got one little bonus point for you, if you've got a moment, which is in honour of the fact that Tim's finally painted all the gnomes, we're going to have one gnome truth, which is from Napoleon, which was, and here it is, a revolution is an idea taken up by blank.
Garden
So what is
gnomes.
blank in this context?
Garden gnomes. No, can't be garden gnomes. So the bonus question for this week, a revolution is an idea taken up by blank.
That's
Possibly
it.
not gnomes. Fantastic.
This means war. This means war.
Okay, then. So as we move into the final furlong, then it's another quick roundup for what's on the table for this week. So, Tamsin, what are you looking at for your painting this week? Then, now that they're finished,
A little bit of scatter terrain to finish painting. And then I haven't decided.
wow. Okay, well, have you got any things to choose from in particular, or are you just going to go shopping?
I've got lots to choose from.
Just too much. All right. Well, we'll have a surprise next week then,
Yes.
quite possibly. Something to look forward to. Adam, what about you then? You're sucking the brush as we speak.
It's I'm just doing a box of Fireforge 28mm Far Eastern Mongol foot, because I bought them and a load of Mongol cav ages ago because I was going to do them as a saga army, and then I thought, I'll do them as a 28mm ADLG army. That'll be fun. And then I played Mongols with me 15mm, and I thought, they're hard work and I'm not good enough, so I'm doing them as a saga army again.
Are you not tempted to make them into a Jurchen Ch'in army now? They would make fantastic Jurchen Ch'in Chinese infantry, I'm sure.
They would do, but in fact, looking at them, I could do medium foot sword bow quite easily, but no. And I'm also be prepping up the goblins, the Moria goblins, to go along with the Lord of the Rings type thing as well.
Okay, well, so next week you'll be able to tell us, because I've not actually put together any of those Fireforge figures as yet, so it'll be interesting to see how they go together. We'll look forward to hearing about it next week. Good.
Before we sign off, are you going to decide what the army list we're going to talk about next week is?
That's a very good point, because we forgot last time, and we'd almost got all the way through this podcast without admitting that. But it's probably we'll get the IT expert, Mr. Leroy Mayer, to get random.org, and then Andy for interjecting and proving to us that we messed up. What are you painting in the next week? We almost talked about this already, I think.
Yeah, hopefully finishing off the unarmoured feared, with any luck getting onto the armoured feared.
And the pikemen are still way off in the distance then.
Indeed. The other thing I was thinking of doing, if I ever get round to it, and my DIY skills are hopeless, is I'd like to make an army camp for the Vikings involving a beach ship. So I need to make kind of half a beach ship out of something. I just haven't worked out how to do it yet.
All right. Well, that's something maybe to talk about. We'll have to do a special edition on which half ships have you made at some point in the future.
Which base is best?
Which base? So then, Simon, let's come to you. And you're on random.org then. So if you can press the magic button and give us a random.org list, that would be fantastic.
List 128.
128. Let's flick through the book. What do we got? Where's that Dark Ages thing?
Mauritanian Byzantines.
Nicephorian Byzantines.
It's a classic.
classic.
It's an absolute classic.
That's
Okay.
good.
I've never put together a Byzantine army before, so
Is that
what the hell
something
do I do with this?
Variety, loads of variety.
So, all right, and Simon, we'll put you down as one of the people to put the list together. Then, and then Adam, what about you? Is that a list?
What
that
you are,
can,
Governor?
Is that a list that you can have a go at as well?
Yeah, no, that's
Cobble together Nicephorians, brilliant.
Yeah.
So we'll come back to you two next week to discuss Nicephorians. That's fantastic.
Well, hey.
And Simon, what's on your painting list? Why after you press the random number button or dot thing?
This week, I'm attempting to start painting my 7 Years' War army. So I want to get at least a couple of battle units or units painted up to see what these QRF miniatures are like. They look quite nice so far.
Out of interest, you say units. What rules are you going to be using with them?
I'm using the King of Battlefield, the ones that Ian Goodwin from our club wrote. Since there's quite a few players in our club, and it's good as an excuse as any.
Yeah. Do you do a unit at a time?
You always get a good game with them.
Do you do a unit at a time, or because
I tend to I base up one unit to get my paint scheme visual, and then I'll do all of them in one big hit. So
okay,
yeah, I'll probably be painting. I've got I think 5 or 7 units of each. Each unit is 3 bases of 6 infantry per base. So I'll do all of them in one big hit.
Have you got battalion guns for them, Simon?
Yep. Of course, being that I love artillery, everyone's got a gun.
Good man.
And also I've got a few sergeants and banner bearers and stuff like that, because you need flags.
Absolutely.
All right, so we'll see how those first test units go next time then. So, Peter, you're getting to the end of the Austrians. Do you think it's something you'll get done next week?
Provided they turn up, yeah.
Provided they turn up, you're just poised and ready.
It's actually mimicking the actual Napoleonic War. They'll finally turn up too late for the battle.
And dribs and drabs. And then Dave, you're just crossing your fingers that the Egyptians arrive. So if they don't, is there anything else that's going to sneak its way into the pile, or are you just optimistic?
I think I've ordered quite a large. I mean, I get the impression Ian makes them up as he goes, so that would be interesting. I think I don't expect them to arrive too quickly. So it's finished the 4 bases of samurai, which are actually I'm sitting here playing with at the moment, painting them as we go. They'll get done. I've got a Bisley filing cabinet next to my painting desk which has got things in there which have been. So from all those Kickstarters from War and Empire, Forged in Battle, I've still got quite a few bags of things left over from there. So there's Scythian foot bowmen, I need to finish them, a couple of bases of them at least, and some Ron firearms Thracians. So there's like some interestingly fun, 2 bases of this, 2 bases of that. And if I ever get bored, I sit there and start painting commanders, because they're always fun to do as an individual thing.
Okay. So unless lots of Egyptians arrive, it's a bit of an eclectic week of bits and bobs for you then.
If the Egyptians start arriving, then that's it. That's me for about 6 months, I reckon.
The production's lining. Okay. And I think for myself, it is just carry on with horses. See if I've got the discipline to do all the straps and all the rest of it on the horses first, just because I've never ever approached an army like that, and then start thinking about how to pick the colours for these Hungarians. I've downloaded a load of flags, so I've got some sort of colour keys for it, and I'm thinking about doing an experiment of trying to kind of print off shield patterns onto paper, because we just got a new printer at home that's a lot higher spec than the one that we bought about 20 years ago, and so I can get decent resolution. And I'm just thinking whether some of these I can actually just print off shields on bits of paper and stick them on, and see if I can get some of the heraldry done slightly better than I normally do in that one without having to go down the LBMS route. Because I've got a sneaking suspicion that modern printers are almost good enough to, or are good enough to actually just do stuff if you can scale the images to the right size to start with. I think flags is one thing, straightforward, but I'm just wondering if it's possible to do the flag thing, but with shields. Simon,
I haven't done it, but Gordon has done it. So he's designed up some his own shield flags, or whatever you want to call them, and printed them off on his printer at work or at home and put them on his miniatures, and they look really stunning. And
I think he's got some very clever software for his printing things.
Photoshop.
Yeah, Photoshop. That's, I guess, what he does. So I'll just be copying images off the internet from Pinterest.
You
or
also
something
want
like
to
that.
get. You probably want to use quite low weight paper, so it's something like maybe 60 GSM, so it's thinner than standard.
Okay, all right, that's a good catch.
Okay.
All right, well, I will look for some 60 GSM paper then, and then print some really, really tiny images.
I think I got some for. I think Ryman's.
Well, I will give it a go, and I'm not sure I'll get to the shields next week. I probably will still be swearing at horses by then, and I might even base the horses before I paint any of the riders, which would be kind of weird. So it's definitely a week of horses and other stuff, and then I think some of us will also be trying to actually play Art to the Gare on Tabletop Simulator. Possibly starting as soon as tomorrow, so we might be reporting more on that as well. So all right, going around the thing, thank you everybody, and we will another week. We've done just a shade under 2 hours this time, so this is still starting to stretch out as usual. I think
We're getting quicker.
We did it a bit quicker. I think the new format for the army listing was kind of interesting, and with a vote at the end, so we'll see the classic Nicophorians coming out after that as well. Both of these lists will be on the Madaxeman website in the wiki. And if we talked about anything that I can actually remember from 2 hours ago, I might even put a link on the blog. Thanks for listening. Stay safe out there, and goodbye from me and goodbye from everybody else.
Bye.
Cheers. Bye.
Huh?